explode.
But it does.
I know, I'm excited.
It does.
Alright, you heard it here first. They're both going to explode, is what we got odds on. Alright, so,
it's good for
up Chuck ready.
test machining, like
Up, Chuck.
Or sorry,
like
get these right.
UnderScore.
UnderScore and Angry Paperweight. Are you two ready?
Yes.
Alright, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. 3, 2, 1, fight, robots, fight! Ooh, the two weapons hit head to head. Angry Paperweight already sounds like he's getting back up to
try to
speed.
cycle the power on and off.
Uh-oh, but it looks like UnderScore is not moving. We're going to start a count. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Match over.
I wonder what happened.
It looks like our victor will be Angry Paperweight.
Alright, so here is UnderScore for after the last event at Bot Bash 2018. I took a really good hit against my motor here, and I believe what happened is the frame bent and hit this back firewall, I guess you can say, and it pulled electronics out. But the more I look at it, what I believe happened, because the more I try to bend this and it really doesn't match up with the connection where the firewall is. I think because the last lid that I had printed here, it had a gap down here, a slight, like a 2mm gap, and I believe what happened was wires vibrated out and it ripped it out. It ripped out my Dust Micro ESC, and it was sitting outside of the firewall and everything, so I believe that's what happened. So I'm not going to redo the design here, but I redid the design on the cover, so now there's no gap. So what we're going to do now is take all this apart and try to rewire it so we can install it back in. So what I'm using for screws to hold in these motor mounts is servo mount screws. I have tons of those and I never use them. I'm always hot gluing my servos in place or whatnot, never using these screws. So I have lots of these laying around, and they work very well for these micro projects. They're very lightweight and they got a nice like built-in washer to them, so they kind of hold everything in place very well. Alright, let's get this other one out here. The lighting is terrible, but I did order some 2 sets of soft lights with big 28-inch hoods, so I will be having much better lighting very soon. Okay, so there's that. Let's put this all apart. Now let's take the motor off. And these are some titanium screws that I got from Hobby King. All the screws in this are titanium besides those servo screws there. Okay. Alright, there's our electronics. I probably could shorten these wires a little bit more. I do need to use a brand new ESC here because this one actually has pads ripped off of it because it took a direct hit from my blade. And let me see if anything else is damaged. The motors look good, the wheels look good, the weapon ESC looks good, even the switch here looks good. The LED indication light looks good. The receiver looks fine, just some wires are cut here. I'll have to reattach those. Alright, so there's that. Got a couple more screws to undo here. And these hold in the 20mm standoffs that I've been using with these builds. Seems to work very well. So just pop the standoff in place. Use the screw. Oh, I never cleaned this up yet. There we go. In place. Now I'll be able to show you the damage a little better to the firewall. You can see what I believe happened here. So I don't actually think that the hit that I took destroyed the firewall. I believe it was the actual wires coming out of the gap that was in there. I'll show you here in a second. Standoff in there now. Screw that in. There we go. You don't need to do it too tight, just tight enough so it's not moving around. You can, it's just plastic nylon and a screw so you can easily crush the plastic and cause some problems. So here's the firewall from the other one here. When I did first look at it after the battle, all this was sticking out this way versus being pushed in, so that makes me also believe that that's also what happened. And so there will be a little nut that also sits right in there, and that will hold the bottom plate on as well. Alright, so now let's look at these electronics, and actually, we already did that. So now let's go grab another DOS Micro, get it soldered up, reattach the motors to it, and then start working on getting the power connected to it and my signal wires. Alright, we got our brand new DOS Micro ESC. And we're going to get this all tinned up, ready to go. Probably won't use any of these wires. Save those for another project. Let's zoom in a bit here. Oop, wrong way. I don't have a macro filter on right now, so I can't get quite as close as normal. That's alright though, that should be good. Let's go back a little bit. There we go. Alright, so we're going to tin this up real quick. Only takes just a few seconds. So just hold this here steady with a clothespin. That's usually what I use. There we go. And start our tinning process. It's shaking too much. Here, let me grab another clothespin here to hold that clothespin in place. There we go. That'll keep it moving around. It's easy. Definitely took a while to get going there. It's because I'm trying to show you guys. Made it a lot harder. There we go. Should just take a tap like that. Let's get our motors. There we go, all done. That was odd, it was not zooming out for some reason. I guess I had a bunch of digital zoom in there. Alright, so that's all tinned up, ready to go. Now we're going to desolder the motors off of here because I don't want to shorten these wires anymore because I pretty much made them about as short as I could and have it still fit. So I use a little bit of hot glue to kind of reassure things are in place. Now it's semi-permanent. It stays on there until you tear it off for the most part or heat it up. So I'm going to desolder this motor here. Get that one done. That one's done. Alright, and we're just going to tear off that other wire because there was only one wire left on that whole receiver there. Alright, so that's pretty much trash. Or I could keep it for the FETs, the little speed controllers on there. Or maybe this voltage regulator. So yeah, I'll keep that for future disassembly for fixing ESCs. Now we're going to go through and I guess I was gonna re-tin these motors, but they look really good still, so we're not going to do that. So the way this ESC goes, it goes, I believe it's negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. So we're gonna attach this one right here, the negative wire. Trying to make it where you can see makes it really hard to do the job, so sorry about that, but I want to do a good job on the soldering so it doesn't come apart during battle. There we go. Now let's get this motor on there as well. Short wires make it very difficult to do this, but it is what it is. There we go. Now we're going to check our solder job and make sure that it's tight. I'm giving him a really good tug because impacts will probably be more than impacts will hit it a lot harder than what I'm tugging at. Or I should say, my tugging will be harder than the impacts will produce. That's what I was trying to say. So there we go. So that's ready to go like that. And now we're going to try to remember the wiring here, and I'll be back in a moment. Alright, so let's hook up the positive negative wire. We're going to have to re-tin these. These lost their solder on them when they were torn out. And what just happened was a piece of solder fell off and it fell into the ESC. So we're going to make sure that that is not going to be a problem. So let's get that out of there. See, that was inside the ESC right there, loose. That could have fell in and caused a short very easily. What you can do is cover your electronics with conformal coating, and that will help that from happening. But so far all my builds are pretty close to the weight, and I don't have much room for extras like conformal coating. Probably doesn't weigh very much, but still. So let's get the ESC hooked up with power. There we go. Alright, so now our power is connected again. So now we need to hook up the power, or sorry, negative, power, and first channel and second channel. Seeing all these wires were torn out, I'm going to have to re-tin all these wires here coming out of the receiver. Just takes a second. I'm blowing the fumes out of the way. I don't have a fan set up right now. I do have a good draft going here, but it's kind of blowing right into my face. So when you hear me blowing, I'm blowing the fumes away. Alright, so let's hook this up. We're going to go negative first, or ground, whatever you want to call it. I was going to lengthen these wires to back to where they were, but I believe that I can still fit this all in there no problem by not lengthening them. So, I'm going to go negative first here. Let's get these signals out of the way. There we go. Let's do positive. There we go. Now we're going to do channel 1 or motor 1, which hooks into receiver channel 2 for my setup. Okay, and here's channel 3, which is motor 2. And there we go. And that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to go over these connection points with some hot glue to make sure that those don't come off during combat. And before we do that, we are first going to do the tug test to make sure that these are soldered on there good. Alright, looking good. So that's pretty much it for the soldering. So I'm going to go plug in the hot glue gun, get that going. So I was thinking I should probably just do a test with this to make sure this ESC works properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this weapon won't spin up. We're going to attach this to it here. Pinch it all together there. With our remove before combat weapon safety flag. And there's someone vacuuming in the background. That's alright though. Alright, so let's get this going. Switch to our proper model. Whoops, still do that with this radio. UnderScore. There we go. Still clumsy on operating this controller here. Just had it, just got it recently, so still learning it. Alright. So now we're set, and we're going to plug this in. This light is so dim, it's barely, you can barely see it. Alright, so let's get some movement. Oh, we got movement. And I have those connected properly. And the weapon wants to work, so that's all good there. Let's turn that off. Remove our weapon safety flag. Turn off our controller. And our hot glue looks good and ready. So now we're just going to go over these connections here to make sure that they don't come out during combat. I don't want to put too much on, but just enough to kind of keep the wires from bending and the pads covered up and attached to it nicely there. Alright. There we go. Now what we're also going to do is throw all of the components on the scale just to make sure that we are still within weight. And if not, I can probably reduce some wires or something else like that here. Grab the scale. go. So here's the new chassis, new lid. Comes at 48 grams. Here's our electronics. Our drive motor mounts there. All of our hardware. And our battery. And also, I do have a few of these batteries with the wires reduced very small for my upchuck build, which is very much so pushing the weight limit. And looks like we lost a gram. That's pretty cool. Unless I'm forgetting something. No, it looks like all of it. Alright, that works. So 144. We're definitely within weight. With a weight class of 150 grams. So now we can reinstall everything here as best of my ability. And if I recall correctly, it was quite the pain in the butt to get everything in there in the first place. So we'll start with our weapon assembly here. Weapon motor. We need some thread lock. Don't forget your thread lock to keep those screws in. I ordered this from Hobby King. I think it was $2. It is a huge, huge bottle of thread lock. I'm used to getting these little guys for that price. They're like only like an inch tall, little bottle, little teeny thing. This thing is huge. This thing should last me a very long time. Those little bottles last me a very long time. Let's get to something. Put a little bit on here. And I'm liking this stuff a lot better. It kind of gums up a lot faster than the other stuff I had. Like if I leave to sit here for like 10 minutes, it'll already be gooey. Kind of holding its shape there. It doesn't flow around too much. Alright, so let's get our weapon motor installed. So you can already see it's quite gooey, the thread lock there. Maybe you can't see from the angle, but I'm used to it being like water until it is dry overnight. So I wonder if this stuff actually dries up a lot faster. Usually you're supposed to let thread lock sit for 24 hours before using it. Or so, something like that. Okay, now that they're all in there, I can kind of firm them up a bit. I just barely put them in place so that I can make sure I can move the motor around, keep the holes lined up. Alright, spins good. Okay, now what we need to do is start to place everything in here. We'll probably go first with our switch here. The way I've designed this, there's a hole on the top which allows you to access the switch from the outside. And so, looks like I'm going to have to peel off a bunch of this hot glue to get it to fit. Because what I do is I hot glue this in place. There we go. So, what I'll do is, I got a bunch of hot glue still on there. I'll just use the tip of the gun here to heat up the existing glue. Make a big mess everywhere. And then slide that in place while it's still hot. That should do the trick. And if you want, you can also go over the top of it. Oh, it didn't show very well. But on my builds here, I add in a placement for the switch to lock in place. And all my builds on Thingiverse will have that on there for this certain switch, and I will put a link to it in the description. Okay, so that's dry and good in place. So let's get these motors mounted. So I believe this is this side and this is that side. Very tight place here, so it's pretty tough getting this all lined up. Let's rely on the magnetism here. Hopefully that'll work. Almost. There we go. I need to remagnetize these screwdrivers. They have been magnetized in quite a long time now, I think over a year. You just sit them on a really strong magnet just for like 24 hours and they'll keep a good magnet. They'll stay magnetized for quite a while. And this will just be an easy switch around if I do have these motors on the wrong side. I can also go into my controller and fix it there, but I'm not very good at that, I'll be honest with you. Oh, there's another thing that I should do before I put this motor in, because I won't be able to really do it after that, is this LED light. I have a hole in the firewall here. Let's see, right there. You can kind of see the, and that's where the light comes through. The very dim light. I think what I have going on is it's a 5 volt LED. It's just I think the, shoot, I forgot the component name, is reducing the power too much. So let's pull off some of this hot glue that I have on here. So we're just going to try to get a little bit around the edge and slide it in there. You can see it sticks out the front there. As you can't see it, you can see a little roundness of it. So I'll put a dab of hot glue over the top to make sure that it stays in place, because we don't want that falling out during our battle. We'll let that cool down and harden while we put these screws in. I guess it should be fine. At least we'll get them into the motor mount. That's what I should have done earlier with the other side. Start them in the motor mount and then set it in there and then screw it in place. And sorry again for the crappy lighting, but this will be fixed very shortly. I will be getting my new lighting on the 4th of January. And I'll get back into doing all my filming like before. I really haven't filmed anything in about 6 months or so because of my lighting situation. Okay. And that's not quite lined up right for some reason. I think the motor is not properly in the motor mount, so I'm going to undo it. Let's see what's up here. Yep, it's not lined up properly. So we got to make sure our motor is lined up in the motor mount here. There we go. Let's just double check that we have these motors on the proper side before I get too much more into this. So this is upside down how it is right now. Let's reattach our weapon safety. So, no getting hurt here. Can't have that. I don't lose any fingers. And now our switch needs to be activated here. There we go. Yep. My left and right is backwards, and that's what I want right now, seeing that this is upside down. I believe, because now it doesn't. My forward and back is incorrect, and so my motors are on the wrong side. So let's switch those around. Because I'm building this upside down, I got confused on the side, because normally I don't build them upside down like this. So that's an easy fix. Just spin them around. let's readjust everything here so later on I'll be able to do this properly. There we go. So UnderScore is my version of shrapnel. If you're familiar with a very popular 3D printed bot available, shrapnel. Well, at least the newer version is, I think version 3 is not so much 3D printable. It's more you get the material cut out. So over the years, the gentleman that designed it, I'm drawing a blank at the moment, has a bunch of renditions of it. And so what I did was, I think I did like, I mixed number 2 and 3 together to kind of get this design, and a fully 3D printable version of it. So just because I like to double check stuff before putting everything in there and spending all that time, I'm going to turn it all back on and plug it in and make sure that everything's proper. Weapon safety back on. Okay, so let's make sure everything is correct. Okay, forward is forward, back is back, left is left, and right is right. Alright, we are good. And then I do have a switch set up here. I don't recall which one it is, but everything is reversed. There we go. Alright. So if I flip upside down, I just flip a switch and I'm good to go. Alright, so let's turn it off. Remove our weapon safety, we're good to go. And let's try to cram all this stuff back in there and leave room for my battery, which was the really hard part because it's such a tight build. Seeing I am about 6 grams under, I probably could maybe stretch the chassis a centimeter, half a centimeter, and make it a little easier to put stuff in here for future, but I like having that extra weight available just in case. Alright, so let's try to get this all in there. Last time the battery sat right about there, in there, and my weapon ESC was against the firewall here, kind of tucked in there, and let's see here, I believe I did. My wires are a little bit shorter this time because I didn't replace them, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get this all in here, I bet. I believe so. That's where I shouldn't have been lazy and probably redid the wiring. and I will hot glue everything in place after I get it all organized in the battery fitting. Seems about right. Oh, you know, I am missing 3 more screws, so but that wouldn't give me 6 grams, so I'm good there on the weight wise. Alright, so that looks pretty good actually. And here is the plate that kind of holds everything in place here. I'm gonna grab those screws, be right back. Here I can kind of show you the difference in these lids. That's the gap. I had way more than a few millimeter gap. About a half a centimeter of gap in there. So that was actually a big deal. I'm sure that's what happened, is that my wires slipped out and my weapon blade grabbed my wires and pulled my ESC right through the firewall. Here, I'll show you on the other one here, a little better. Quite the gap. Yeah, that was a huge gap. I don't know why I didn't fix that before my first battle with this bot. That was a foolish laziness on my part. You don't want to be defeating yourself in a battle. That's never good. So we got more titanium screws here. Some 8-inch or 8mm and some 6mm in length. Or I'm sorry, yeah, 6. There we go. And no thread locks needed for these, seeing they're just screwing into nylon standoffs. Grabbing the wrong screwdriver there. Screw this all the way in here. Let's add in our 3M nut. Tighten that down. It's not grabbing there. There we go. Or not. And this chassis and all these 3D printed parts on this spot are ABS Max by eSun. Alright, our build is done, except for I got a little bit of ESC poking out here. To do a little bit of adjusting to get that to fit. Alright, there we go. So we're going to fire it up and see how it goes. Make sure it's all good again. Test and retest, test and more retests. You don't want to go out and show up to a battle with an untested bot. That's just never good. One of our switches was switched. And that's why you always keep your weapon safety on, even though I do have a ESC that has a no signal failsafe built into it. I already have the failsafe set up on my weapon, but with this ESC it only has a failsafe for the receiver. There's only a failsafe for one channel, and so I make that the channel that is the weapon. So that's all good. Oh yeah, we're ready to go. And we'll do a little weapon test. I'm going to step around the corner here. Quite scary. Let's make sure that our... Oh, what do we have in here? We got something going on. For some reason, the bottom plate, the screw mount tore out on that hit right there. That's why we test things, right? Alright, so I'm going to print a thicker bottom plate with a little... I think I might use a different material. This ABS seems to not do very good thin. Switch it off. All right. So what really did happen right there? Let's just see. Everything works fine, but for some reason that bursted open. I think maybe I have these things crammed in here a bit. Oh, you know, I never hot glued these wires and stuff in place as well. That's very important. Must do that. Here, we'll turn the ESC there. So it's no longer sticking up right there. And then we'll get this glued into place. So let's get our weapon ESC hot glued. There we go. Put a little bit of hot glue right there on that corner to hold the DOS Micro dual channel ESC in place. And that's actually probably good on the gluing. I don't think I need to do any more. What I can also do is use the battery with the smaller wires, and that will make it not so crammed. Okay, let's get this on here. This will also reduce the chances of connections happening on the metal to the receiver here. And I'll put a little bit on the antenna wire just to make sure that it doesn't slip out and get cut and I lose reception. Because, you know, there is still a crack there, or, you know, a gap could form while vibrating. No, not as much as there was before. So definitely gotta fix this though. I do have a second lid that I printed. We'll grab that. I'd like to use something a little more stiff, or I guess just a thicker plate will do. Maybe I'll double it up to, I think it's like 1.5 millimeters. I could make it 3 millimeters and it'd probably be fine. There's plenty of room for the tires, wheels and tires. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I will definitely do that. I'll make it thicker. Maybe even print it in PLA Plus. This stuff is super strong. A little heavier, but I think I have the weight to do it. Seeing it came out to only 46 grams. You know, 144 grams, my mistake. I do have some nylon X and some bridge nylon, but I can't seem to get them to print properly. The top to bottom layers are not connecting. My side to side layers are fine, but just my top to bottom layers. I keep on coming back to I need to dry it more, but I've dried it overnight twice in my dehydrator at 165 degrees, and it still didn't seem to improve its dryness. I still hear popping and sizzling and stuff like that. A little more hot glue in there to hold in the motor wires. We don't want those moving around while I'm going into battle. Alright, so let's get this in here again. This is a really tight fit. Seeing I do have the weight left over, I believe I am going to stretch this to just to like 1/2 centimeter, and that will make all of this much easier to do. Or, yeah, I'll just stretch it out. Won't take long on the CAD. Just a few minutes to do that. This bottom plate is just very, very flimsy. I'm not liking that one bit. So yeah, what I'll do is I will lengthen the chassis a teeny bit. And also, you know, there is a little more weight. I probably could thicken these arms up a bit to prevent any breaking or bending. It is already up on Thingiverse, but I will do some adjustments to it to make it better. The name of the bot is UnderScore on Thingiverse. It should be easy to find. There we go. Okay. So, let's check the drive again to make sure we're all good still. Through the lid here, we can turn on our bot. Alright, still good in the drive department. Still wants to spin. Alright, I'm going to take this weapon safety off and walk around the corner here and do another little spin up test. See if it does that again. Seem to like going full throttle, so I guess I won't go full throttle with this guy. But looking good. Maybe I did get a little bit of a bend in this motor when I took that hit. I forgot what bot that hit me, but it was from Team Logic 404, I believe. I'll have to re-look up the name and probably edit that out. Alright, so I'm actually going to call that done. Oh, I did want to check the motor reverse and the weapon safety switch. So alright, so no motor, so I got the weapon safety on. And let's check the reversed terminals. Forward is back and back is forward. And that should be evident when I'm upside down here. There we go. So I don't have to worry about trying to figure out the direction in my head instead of just flipping a switch. Very cool. Alright, so UnderScore is done for the meanwhile. I may take it to the next competition in this condition. But I will probably try to make the chassis a teeny bit longer just to make it fit a little better. But this plate seemed to hold up. I don't know what's happening there when it freaks out and jumps. I'm thinking just the motor is a little bit bent maybe. I did take a massive hit right there. Alright, so thanks for checking out my rebuild of my UnderScore. And hopefully I'll see you in competition.